Rachio and Orbit B-Hyve are two of the top smart sprinkler controllers you can get right now, and at the time of making this video, they are the two top selling ones on Amazon. There are a lot of similarities between both of these controllers, but figuring out the differences can be a real pain. So let's compare the two and see what works best for you. I'm going to be using Rachio 2 because it's closer in price to Orbit, and there isn't much difference between Rachio 2 and 3 when comparing against Orbit anyways. Both of these companies sent me their controller for an unbiased review. Side note, my grass looks terrible because I didn't plant a winter lawn, so my grass is all dead. But I thought I'd do this video now because it's a good time to get a smart sprinkler controller before summer hits. One of the biggest reasons you want to buy a smart sprinkler controller is that it can automatically adjust your watering patterns. So let's look at comparing this main feature first. To allow this to happen, you set up each zone with the grass type, the soil type, what kind of sprinkler it is, how much shade it gets, and a bunch of other things so it knows how much to water your grass. After setting up the zones, the systems have very similar functionality, but how you configure them is where you're going to really see the big differences. For Orbit, turn on smart watering and it will automatically program all of your zones. The settings to adjust the times for each zone is kind of hidden in the zone details. What's annoying is you can only do it at certain percentages, and if you want to do it more, you'll have to go back and select it again for a greater percentage. It's not really user friendly. I do like how Orbit shows you how the frequency of watering will increase or decrease during the year, and you can adjust that. The start time is in a different spot, and what days to avoid on smart watering is in a spot back in the settings. Looking at the schedule, it breaks up the zone times for a cycle and soak, but you can't turn this off in the smart features. As for Rachio, it's more user-friendly because everything is in one location. Adjust the start time, duration for each zone, and what days it can water all in the same spot. Changing the duration doesn't have limits like Orbit, and you can toggle if you want the cycle and soak to be enabled as well. Rachio has seasonal changes, but it's not clear what those changes will be compared to Orbit's frequency changes over the year. After using Rachio for a few years, the seasonal changes typically mean that watering duration increases when it's heating up during the summer. Both controllers can skip watering if it's raining, too windy, or freezing outside. Since it doesn't really rain much here in Arizona, I had to change my location to a place that was raining here in the US to test out the rain delay, but it does work on both systems, even on a fixed scheduled program. You can also change the weather station in both apps to be a public or a personal weather station, and Rachio's is pretty easy to find, and Orbit's is way in the back. I almost didn't even know it was there. Rachio has its own issues though, especially if you want to water on an infrequent schedule. For example, in the springtime, I'm supposed to water the lawn like every 14 days, but I can't do that in Rachio, whereas Orbit makes it really easy to water like every 3 days or every 14 days. They both work with Alexa and Google Assistant. Tell Rachio to start watering Zone 5 for 3 minutes.
Okay, Zone number 5 is running for 3 minutes.
Ask Orbit B-Hyve to water Zone 2 for 10 minutes.
Sure, getting Orbit B-Hyve. Your timer is now watering Station 2 for 10 minutes.
I personally don't use the voice commands to control my sprinklers. I feel like the commands are a little long and hard to remember. In the rare times I want to manually turn on the sprinklers, I'm just going to pull out my phone and use the app. Rachio connects to SmartThings and other smart home devices, but I really haven't seen the benefit of connecting your sprinklers with other smart home devices. I don't know, maybe I haven't really thought of any, but if you guys have thought of some, let me know down in the comments. Both Orbit and Rachio apps will notify you when it's done watering, but only Rachio will notify you when it's starting to water. And this might not seem like a big deal, but if you're having a party in the backyard and you forgot the sprinklers are on, it's nice to get that notification. Orbit comes with an outdoor case, which is very convenient. And if you want to use Rachio outdoors, you have to buy an extra case and plug, which isn't too difficult to set up, but it is something extra you have to buy. And I'll link to those things as well as everything in this video down in the description. Adding the wires to Rachio is really easy because you don't need an extra tool. You just push the wires straight into the controller. As for Orbit, you need a small flathead screwdriver, which they include, and it's really not a big deal. I'm just being nitpicky. I've been using Rachio for a few years now and I've had zero issues with it. I recently received Orbit for testing and it's worked well until it failed randomly and I couldn't control it from the app or from the controller. I had to do a hard reset on it and I lost all my programs, but everything else was saved. It might have been a fluke thing, but it is something to know. The one big thing that's nice about Orbit is that you don't have to rely on the app to use the controller. It has a lot of functionality on the controller so that if it ever went out of business, you could still use the controller without having to replace it. Whereas Rachio, there's very limited use on the controller. You can just select which zone and start it. It's kind of made for testing. If Rachio went out of business, you probably have to buy a whole new controller. If you want a great smart sprinkler controller for the least amount of money, then I would go with Orbit. Sure, the app isn't the most intuitive, but you would get used to it. And you can do some things that you can't do in Rachio, like water every 3 days or every 14 days. If you want an app that's a little bit more intuitive and easier to navigate, then I would go with Rachio. And you can connect it to your smart home and smart things. Sure, it's going to cost a little bit more, but it might be worth it to you. If you have any questions, let us know down in the comments or reach out to us on Twitter at Smart Home Solver. Thanks for watching, subscribe for more smart home videos, and we'll see you again next time. Next time on the Smart Home Solver, how Arizona might be the worst place to live. Except for the 10 minutes of sunset you get each day makes it all worth it. Actually, it doesn't.